Chapter 9 of Tractate Menachos covers the particular types of grains, oils, and wines that were used for mincha flour offerings. The first Mishnah says, the grain for both private and communal flour offerings can come from inside or outside of Israel, and from the new or the old crop, besides for the omer and the 2 loaves offerings, which must come from the new crop and from Israel specifically. All of them come from the best quality flour, which is specifically from the regions of Menachos and Zitzcha. Second to those would be flour from the valley of Ephraim, and technically the flour could be brought from anywhere, but this is where it was done from. The Gemara says others actually disagree, and say an omer and 2 loaves offering from the old crop would actually be valid, they just don't fulfill the mitzvah. I quote verses for this. They do agree. The flour for these must be made of grain from Israel, although apparently still others dispute this and say that it can even be brought from elsewhere. It's said that the omer can be brought from the sabbatical year barley. This is as fresh grain must be used, and it disputes the source for this. This is discussed further going through many verses and a number of principles on bikurim tads and unique circumstances where they wouldn't be brought, such as if it was crops from a cave roof, a cultivated ruin, or a perforated flower pot specifically, or plants that were grown in a wooden boat. It discusses the better quality produce of the region of Ephraim. New Mishnah. For mincha offerings, we don't use grain from fertilized fields, or from irrigated fields, or from tree fields, although if one did so, then the offering would be valid after the fact. The proper grain production method for flour offerings was to just plow the ground for a year, then to sow the field in the second year, and then 70 days before Passover it'll produce good quality flour. The flour was checked by the temple treasurer, who would check for dust. If there was, he'd keep checking, and if it was wormy, it'd be totally invalid. The Gemara additionally spent some time describing this unique plowing method to get better quality flour. It said that the omer offering is brought from the southern fields of Israel, as the sun sets and shines on them. That's sourced. It said that if fine flour or wheat kernels become majority wormy, they're invalid. It's unresolved if that's majority of the wheat kernel, or also of the measurement. Also, if somebody consecrated wormy wheat kernels, it's unresolved if he received lashes based on whether this is comparable to consecrating a blemished offering. It's also said that wormy, moist wood cannot be brought on the altar pyre. Dry wood can have the bad sections scraped off. If somebody consecrated wormy wood, it's also unresolved if there's lashes based on if it's compared to consecrating a blemished offering. New Mishnah. The oil of tekoa was the best quality, so it was used for mincha offerings. Then went oil from Regev in Transjordan. It could have been brought from anywhere, but this was what was done. Oil is not brought from fertilized or irrigated fields, nor from fields with seeds sown between olive trees. If this was done, it is valid after the fact. There are certain types of oil which could be used only after the fact, namely anpikanon oil, which will be described, and others which can't be used at all, like soaked olive berries or pickled or boiled olives. The Gemara brings some related discussion on these regional, higher quality oils. There's some discussion as to what this anpikanon oil exactly is. Some say it's oil which is a third unripe, and it was used as a depilatory typically. Along with pickled or boiled olives being prohibited, so is olive sediment or olives that smell poorly. If somebody consecrated disqualified oil, it's also unresolved if there's lashes based on if that's compared to consecrating a blemished offering. New Mishnah. The olives were harvested 3 times a year, and 3 grades of oil were extracted from each of these. First, when olives picked from the top of the tree, there's some dispute as to how exactly they were pressed, but there was essentially 3 extractions done, and that would create the 3 oils of the harvest. The first could be used for the menorah, and the latter 2 could be used for mincha offerings. By the second olive harvest, the crop would have grown to the rooftops. Again, there were 3 oil extractions. The first could be used for the menorah, and the latter 2 could be used for the mincha offerings. For the last oil harvest, the crop is packed in a vat until it spoils, and it then dried on a roof and then pounded, and this was done with, again, 3 extractions. The first could be used for the menorah, the latter 2 could be used for the mincha offerings. The Gemara additionally describes this process and some further opinions as to how it was done. New Mishnah. The first oil of the first harvest had the highest quality. The second oil of the first harvest and the first oil of the second harvest were equal. The third oil of the first, the second oil of the second, and the first oil of the third were equal. The third oil of the second and the second oil of the third were equal, and the third oil of the last harvest was the lowest quality. Logically, as the menorah, which isn't eaten, requires the best quality oil, you'd have thought that the mincha offerings would also require to be the best quality oil, so it proves otherwise from a verse. The Gemara says it means these oils are equal for mincha offerings, but not so by the menorah. It further clarifies the requirements of the quality of the oils of the menorah and brings a number of verses. New Mishnah. Finally, on wines. The best quality would be from the regions of Kedochim and Atulin, and then from the highlands of Beis Rimmah and Beis Lavan and the valley of Kefar Signa. Anywhere is valid, but that's what was done. One couldn't be from fertilized or irrigated fields or a field where seeds were sown between the vines, but if this was done, it's valid after the fact. Wine from grapes that were hung in the sun is only valid after the fact. It's a debate if old wine could be used. We don't use sweet wine or smoked or cooked wine, and if they're used, it's invalid. We only use grapes from vines that trail on the ground and from cultivated vineyards. The wine is only placed in small barrels. The barrel is not filled until its mouth, so that way its aroma spreads when the barrel is opened. The wine is not brought from the very top or bottom of the barrel, so that way there will be no mixed-in particles or sediments. Rather, it's brought from the middle third. The wine is checked for impurities, and the checker would tap the barrel opener with a reed to tell him when to stop, which will be explained. If there's mold in the wine, it's invalid. The Gemara says grapes that were left in the sun to be sweetened are fine, but if the grapes themselves are sweet, they're prohibited. The debate if old wine could be used is based on some verses. It explains the remaining points, including that the wine checker wouldn't talk in the room and used a reed to communicate, as talking in the room would be bad for the wine. If somebody consecrated wine with mold, it's also unresolved if there's lashes based on if it's compared to consecrating a blemished offering. Also, it says the best quality offering rams come from the region of Moab, lambs come from Hebron, birds come from the Temple Mount area, and it said that very wide lambs are preferable. It discusses some related verses, and that's the end of chapter 9.